Let me say welcome to y'all. This is a special call today as so many people are tuning in to 2024 and asking what they can do. Our network of supporters and donors asked us to create an opportunity to introduce their friends and family to Galvanize, to share who we are and what we do, and create a space for you to check us out and see if you want to join us. So I was really honored by the request and this phenomenal turnout. I hope that you feel inspired by what you hear today. And, if you do, feel free to share this recording with your own networks. If you're someone who is super anxious for a space to make sense of how this election year is shaping up, what happened last night, etc., I'm going to stay on at the end of this recording and we'll answer some questions, but I really want to invite you to join us next month when we'll have one of the most renowned pollsters in the country share her sense of what's happening, and we'll be able to look at some of our data together and compare notes. So please do join us next month. Okay, so hopefully you know what you're in for today. My name is Jackie Payne, and I'm the Executive Director of Galvanize USA, Galvanize Action, and a separate disconnected PAC, the One for All Committee. I spent most of my career fighting for gender, racial, and economic justice as a lawyer and an advocate in DC. Several years ago, I became so alarmed by the rise of authoritarianism and the threat that it posed to our democracy in the US that I left my job to start Galvanize. My goal was to evaluate what was needed and help fill a critical gap in the movement. And we set out to find, connect, and move women to help push back against this terrifying trend and to reliably use their civic power to help protect our democracy and make sure that we're advancing progress for everybody. Today, I want to share with you a little bit about what we've learned over the last 6 years, show you why there is reason to hope, and how we can do it together. So let's start by just acknowledging the problem. Our country is increasingly polarized. We are seeing election after election decided by the narrowest of margins. Folks think that this next election, 2024, will be decided by fewer than 100,000 votes in just a handful of states, right? So increasingly polarized. Our most fundamental rights and freedoms are under attack. Americans are losing trust in government and faith in our elections and public institutions. And a recent poll showed that 3/4 of Americans believe, with good reason, that our very democracy is at risk. With all that on the table, the reality is that after years of chaos and fear and threat, many Americans are just feeling disillusioned and disengaged. And that disengagement is both part of an authoritarian playbook, right? That chaos sows disengagement, but it also has such serious consequences for the future of our republic. The good news is there's reason to hope. As extreme and divided as things seem, the reality is that there's a huge opportunity with moderate women who actually share a lot of the same goals and vision for this country as you and I do. And the challenges are who is able to connect with them. Through our unique combination of data science, neuroscience, and behavioral psychology, we have identified 44 million moderate white women across the country who want an America that works better for everybody, but who aren't particularly entrenched ideologically. They're pretty moderate. They don't feel tied to either political party, and they don't feel super represented. Over the last 6 years, we've gone deep to understand, connect with, and engage these women. And we've proven that when we connect with them on their values in ways that make them feel seen and heard and cared about, we can interrupt and diffuse the really ugly grievance-based narratives that are being used to divide us and pull us apart, and successfully persuade significant numbers of these women to use their political power to stand up and protect our democracy and advance progress across key issues. Elections are determined by razor-thin margins, right? We're seeing this at the national level and in school boards. Really what we know is it doesn't take millions of women to make a difference. in the last national elections, we were divided by just 44,000 votes, right? So we don't need to move millions in the short term. We need to move millions in the long term to build this durable coalition to support our democracy. But in the short term, we need to move thousands. So it is possible and we can do it. Let's talk about how we've learned how to do it. I want to emphasize that that starts with listening. We did not want to come in and say, oh, we think we know what's going on with these women and their lives and why they're voting the way they do. One of the things I hate most is when people say women aren't voting in their own interests. Of course they are. They're rational beings, they're voting in their own interests. The question is, do we understand what their interests are and can we connect with them? So we began by listening, and I literally sat in YWCAs and community centers and libraries in middle America to sit and listen in circle with women and hear from them what's holding them back. If they say that they value some of these same things, they want the same vision for America, they want their children to be in school and to be safe and to get a job that's going to economically advance them, right? So they want a lot of the same things we want. What's stopping them from using their civic power to advance those goals and to protect democracy from the attacks it's under right now? What we heard from women in these rooms was, first of all, they feel really alone and isolated. They feel like nobody around them really shares their views, and that's super destabilizing. It makes you rethink, maybe I'm wrong, maybe they know more than I do. So it creates a sense of a lack of self-confidence, and it's a hit on your self-esteem if you feel like you're the only one. They also talk about feeling like politics just leads to conflict and it's a fight you can't win, and they're tired of fighting. So if they feel like they're the only one that thinks that way and people around them tend to hold different views, then it's like, ugh, this is an uphill battle, right? And I'm struggling in my household even. And so people turn away from struggle, right? The conflict is hard. In our most recent research, we heard from women that they don't even feel like they matter these days. And this shows up with conversations where they're saying like, I am going to the grocery store with my calculator to make sure I don't have to put something back when I check out. And the politicians aren't doing that. And they know that I'm struggling and they don't care, right? So folks feeling like, who cares about me and is looking out for my family? Those are some of the main barriers that has people feeling like, should I even bother to vote? Does it matter? If I do vote, can I make a difference? And do I feel smart enough and confident enough in my views that if I vote, I'll be voting the right way? So those are some of the barriers we heard from women. And those are kind of internal barriers, right? We also track to see what are the external barriers? What are they hearing? What narratives are they being targeted with? What disinformation and misinformation is being sent to them that is influencing their way of thinking that might be holding them back from voting for progress? In 2021, we did a huge survey where we evaluated all of the narratives that white women were being shown and that they believed, right? And what we saw was the immigration narrative was super effective. The idea of a border crisis was very effective at making women feel fear and threat and start to look for a strongman leader. So we saw that the immigration crisis were operating to drive women towards a feeling of, I need a strongman to protect me, and I need to look for a more authoritarian leader to help me here. We also saw the big lie, the notion that Biden did not win the election being a really successful narrative and causing women not to accept the 2020 results and thinking that to lose faith in elections in our democracy. If you were paying attention to the Iowa caucus last week, we saw that around 60%, 66% of Iowa caucus goers said that they believe Biden's win in the last election was illegitimate. So we continue to see, and one of the major reasons they turned out to vote was what they viewed as the border crisis, right? So we're continuing to watch what are the narratives that are being, these women being targeted with that are influencing the way they're thinking about the world, how they're making sense of it, and what kind of leadership they need. Another example of what we see women being targeted with and believing is the attack on trans youth. So that's a place where we see, this is something that we see globally in authoritarian efforts. We see attack on LGBTQ folks as a key wedge that can drive voters to feel like the world is changing too quickly and they're looking for a strong male leader to protect them. So it's not a surprise to see that show up here in the US in the last few years, straight out of the playbook. But it is having an interesting effect. What we see, we analyzed how white women voted in the midterms in 2022, and we saw that their perception of trans youth was highly predictive of that vote. And what we're also see is 65% of moderate white women don't know what they think yet. They feel like things are changing. They're not quite sure what the rules should be. And they're a little bit confused and not sure what they think yet. But this is a moment where who defines that narrative can influence how women think about the world, how they think about the parties, how they think about who the leaders should be. So one of the things we've done recently is gone in and talked to them and said, look, things are changing. It's changing pretty rapidly. You don't have to exactly know what you think yet, but you do have to know that as moms, we don't sanction bullying of children, right? We are the kind of moms who we want our kids to bring their friends in the back door. We want our kitchen filled with kids. We want any kid who comes in that kitchen to feel safe, to feel loved, and to feel respected. And that, at the end of the day, that's who we are, and that's the kind of policies we want. And we're able to talk to moderate women using those kinds of common sense, values-based messages that help to diffuse the attacks that are being sent to them that are really just intended to drag them to the right. And so we're able to intervene and diffuse those efforts. I wanted to stop for a moment to talk about why am I focused on white women? As we've done the work to understand and connect with movable women, Galvanize has developed a particular expertise with moderate white women. And the reason for that is pretty simple. Before Galvanize was created, there was no national organization dedicated to understanding, connecting with, and moving this constituency. We have amazing allies who are dedicated to turning out the base, who are focused on young progressive voters, who are looking at turning out voters of color. But there was a gaping hole when it came to moderate white women. And that was a huge Achilles heel for the movement because white women are the largest voting bloc in the country. We represent 38% of the vote, and we are the largest share of movable voters nationwide. So when you're thinking about who is not yet entrenched, we are the largest share of movable voters. In the states where we work at Galvanize, our core 4 states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, white women make up an even bigger share in those key states. So if you look here on the bottom, you'll see white women are 44% of the vote in Wisconsin, 42% in Ohio, 42% in Michigan, 43% in Pennsylvania. And what we know is when you look at this pie chart and you look at the scale of the vote there, we cannot afford to have a majority of white women joining a bigger majority of white men working against progress or supporting efforts that will undermine our democracy, right? We have got to build a durable multiracial coalition that includes more of these moderate, movable white women. They are an absolutely essential component to a winning strategy. And we don't, as I said, we don't need to win every last person. We need to know who is movable, who wants to come with us that we can connect with, and how to do it. So let's take a quick look at how do we know who is movable and who wants to come with us. The way we approach that is through research and data science. We are an extraordinarily rigorous research-based organization. Everything we do is that we've kicked the tires on everything. We have a whole research team. And we work with some amazing partners. One of our partners is called Grow Progress. We work with them to develop a national survey of white women that allowed us to draw on our previous research. So what did we learn from our early research about what those barriers are and what the drivers of white women's political behavior are? What are the key traits associated with their political behavior? Once we identified those traits, we created a national survey of white women, and we gathered their values, beliefs, opinions, and attitudes. And we were able from there to create clusters. And what you see on this chart here are 5 different clusters of people. And each cluster is made up of people who hold similar traits. So think about, like, sorting your people who are sorting apples with apples and broccoli with broccoli, right? So we've got people and their different sets of traits here, all 5 groups. We take out the 2 groups on the edges. On one side are the folks who are Trump conservatives, who are extremely high in racial resentment, internalized sexism, very low support for the role of government. We don't perceive them as being folks we can easily move. They know what they think. They're entrenched. We, go with God. On the other side, we see clear progressive base, who are primarily defined by their very low racial resentment, very low susceptibility to authoritarianism, very unlikely to blame the other for their lot in life. Those folks are more equity-based, and they tend to be very aligned and partisan, so we sort of leave them to their devices. What we're really looking at are these 3 groups of folks in the middle, who are what we would consider to be the persuadable universe. The folks who, and now that we know about them and we know that they're not particularly entrenched, we can look through and say, what's unique about each of these groups? How can we tailor our approach to each of those groups based on what uniquely drives them and motivates them? What are their core values? What are the things that hold them back? What motivates them? Let's talk to each group individually in a way that's really going to resonate and work for them. And we have, over the last few years, figured out how to communicate with them in 2 primary ways. The first is through a nonpartisan community program. It's a long-term program that offers engaging cultural content that is research-based, and we work with the neuroscientists and behavioral psychologists to figure out what to include in that content. But it's a community program that helps to meet women where they are and drive positive social change. So that's the first version. And then the second approach is by making compelling digital ads and sending them out to our audience. And we'll talk about how we do that. But first, let's look at the community program that we've created. As I said, the community program it's a subscriber program. It really is about offering cultural programming that will address some of these key barriers we've learned about. So what's holding women back from voting their values? Feelings of isolation, low self-esteem, lack of confidence in their own political knowledge or civic agency. How can we start to shore up women on those bases, but do so in a way that is nourishing and feels supportive and keeps women coming back for more, right? These are not folks, they think politics is conflict. They don't want to be in a room talking about politics all day long. They want to talk about the things that connect with them, their concerns, their values, and that feels good and is supportive. And we want to do that with and for them. And we want to make sure that the way that we're providing that content and support actually addresses some of these barriers and shores up their civic agency and willingness to stand up for their values and for democracy. So one of the pieces of programming we create is called Dear Grace. It's an advice column that's designed for our audience with their core values and concerns and motivations in mind. We chose an advice column because 50% of American women read an advice column every week. We love advice columns. It's a little bit entertainment. It's a little voyeuristic, but we see ourselves reflected in it. And the sort of neuropsych about advice columns is that when someone is being offered advice themselves, their defenses kind of come up, right? We say, hey, wait, I don't want to hear that from you. But when we're reading an advice column, we lean in and watch because the advice is being given to someone else, and our brains just sort of naturally reflect, do I agree with that? Is that the advice I would give? How do I feel about that? And it creates a great opportunity to reflect on what we think about something. And so much of what we're doing here is creating the space for women to think about what they think about current events and what's going on in the world, while we're building up their confidence and feelings of agency. So that's what Grace is doing. She offers advice with a pro-social bent. We address any topic that women want to talk about, right? So if they're worried about relationships or money or jobs or childcare, Grace meets them, talks to them about it, reminds them that they're not alone, offers genuinely constructive solutions or links and ways to help them, and also reminds them that they deserve, they deserve childcare. They deserve to be treated with respect, and reminds them to advocate for what they need, whether it's like telling their husband to go pick up his socks or telling Congress to fix the childcare crisis in America. Grace will go there and build up that agency. We launched the program last July, so 6 or 7 months ago, and we have well over 60,000 subscribers. Women are sending, we've had thousands of requests into Grace, asking for advice. And we see women actively engaging and not only asking for advice, but offering advice to other women in the community and taking quizzes and polls and saying, like, I agree with what Grace said, really, engaging and thinking about what they think and then taking a new position. So we're able to track to see, does this engagement actually create that pro-social change we want to see? Another component of the program is called InFocus. That's really our community conversations. So here we're trying to create the feeling of, to actually build community with these women. So this is a whole digital universe, right? Women are subscribers, they're on their website, they're part of a digital community, but we also want to create that feeling of really knowing each other and being in connection to one another. So every month we take on a hot topic. And we work with our research team to say, let's talk about which topic is coming up for women. What should we talk about? What are their concerns? What are their values? How do we address the conversation with them? We have a social worker who moderates the conversation. We work with our neuroscientists to say, what's the best way to approach this conversation? How can we do this in a way that won't kick up defenses, but actually will create a persuasion window and will open women to the possibility of like really reflecting on what they think. So we do that every month. In October, we did one on childcare, and we had this group of women talking about their childcare struggles and what it would mean to them if they had the support they needed. We then we host that conversation. The women who participate in the conversation love it. They are constantly saying how, they came in, they were nervous about it, but it felt so good to be in community, to feel not alone, to see other women were also struggling with what they're struggling, and to feel that sort of solidarity. But then we take those clips and we send them out to the whole universe of subscribers so that we can expand that experience, so that more and more women can watch it and think, oh, what do women in my community think about this, right? So in October, I'm going to show you a clip in just a second of one of the childcare clips. We sent these clips out. We had about 1 in 3 women in our universe respond. We received over 20,000 submissions that month from women telling us how their life would be better if they had the childcare support they needed. So they're actively thinking about this challenge and thinking about how great it would be if they had the kind of government support for childcare that they deserved. And we're building up that sense of like, I deserve this and I should get it. And I am not alone in thinking that. This community of women thinks that. So let's watch this quick video and then I'll give you a little more data on it.
I mean, I do feel like we are Wonder Woman in our own way, just because of what we do for our families. Being a single mom, at one point I was working 4 jobs just to try to, raise my son, pay for childcare, pay the bills, because I'm not one to ask for help. And plus I take care of my dad on top of it too. So it's kind of I don't know. I'm going to get emotional. I'm sorry.
Oh, but you're not alone.
And I was thinking how different your life might be if there was paid parental leave or free access to childcare.
Your kid's in the hospital. You shouldn't have to choose between your child or the job. And I mean, it came down to my child.
For most of my children's lives, I was a waitress, making $2.83 an hour, getting no benefits because they won't give you full time. Like I might have been able to not work as a waitress. I might have been able to go to school and get a better education. My life and my kids' lives could have been a lot different.
I just want to say, you both sound heroic to me. I hear both of you being Wonder Woman and a warrior in your own lives.
So that's just a quick 90-second clip. It's an example of one of the clips. You can see others of them on our website. But when we sent that out, women responded and told us their stories. The other thing that happened was we took this clip and we measured it against the same way that we measure the ads that we produce and create. So this isn't organic, just a clip of a conversation, right? And when we test this in the lab, we show this to a group of people, and then we have a control group who sees a placebo. And what we saw was when people saw this clip, they were really moved, and they said, even if I wouldn't personally benefit, I would be willing to increase taxes if the money goes to federally funded childcare, right? So, and that's a huge success measure to say, even if I wouldn't benefit, I would increase my own taxes for this. So this kind of storytelling motivates people to support an issue like that. And it worked as well as the ads that we actually directed and produced for that purpose. So really exciting. And then when you add to that the fact that our audience isn't just watching this clip, but they're actually participating in telling their own story. We know from behavior change research that it's the watching it, it's reflecting on it, and then actually taking the step of writing your own story of what you want to be true is a huge step in then ultimately making you take action for it. So really exciting innovation to see this kind of organic storytelling have those kinds of the evidence of real movement there. I want to move on just to talk about how the other kind of communications we do. So we've got the community-based program, and then we also have the ads that we create. So just like Dear Grace and InFocus, all the ads that we create, the persuasion messages that we design, are rooted in our really rigorous research and our values-based. We develop messages in three main areas that women are most concerned about right now. Number one is the economy and making ends meet. That is routinely in our research the number one issue that women are most concerned about and which drives their civic behavior. Number two is abortion and other culture wars. So on the proactive side, abortion is very much a driver. Right now, women are concerned about it. And then on the other side, the culture wars, we're seeing, this is where I talked about what is being used as wedges to divide us. So whether it's anti-immigrant sentiment, anti-trans sentiment, talking about crime, these are the kinds of things, whether it's book bans and critical race theory in school, what are the things that are being whipped up to create this feeling of division that has the potential of drawing women away from progress? So that's the second bucket. And then the third bucket is really democracy and the state of our nation. We need to be talking with women about their civic agency. It matters if you vote. It matters if you show up. And it's not just about November 2024, it's about January 2025. What is going to happen in January 25 if their husbands and sons are, putting the guns in the back of the pickup again and thinking about going to DC? What's their reaction to that? What force will they be in their home, in their community, to be a moderating force and to protect our democracy, right? So those are the three buckets that we're talking on. By creating ads that connect with our audience's worldview, by meeting them at their values and offering hopeful, positive solutions, we are consistently returning statistically significant results. In both lab and in-field randomized control trials, we've proven that when women see our ads, we strengthen their support for the issue that we're talking to them about. And because we always do this rigorous testing, we only run ads that we know should work based on the lab test. And then we track the ads impact in field so that we can strategically adjust our spend on the ad in real time. If it's working, if it's not working, we're able to adjust it. And that makes us super cost efficient. In 2022, in the midterms, we ran a 7-month program to our audience in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. And we evaluated it using a randomized control trial, so half of the folks saw our ads and half did not. The results of that 7-month RCT was truly amazing. We moved the people we talked to who saw our ads, we moved them 5 percentage points to make them more supportive for reproductive freedom and 8.6 percentage points on the economy. We received an award for that work, in which we were heralded for having an unprecedented persuasion effect. And then last year, we were the subject of an academic review that lifted up not only how rare our success was, but also how cost efficient our approach was, right? Because of that rigorous testing and tracking. So what I have here for you is an example of how we craft a message. This is an abortion message, and you'll probably notice it doesn't look like most of what you might expect to see from a pro-choice message. It may not actually speak to you personally. When you read this, you might think like, meh, it doesn't do it for me. But that's okay, because you are not the target of this message. It's not designed for your values and your worldview and how you approach it. This is specifically designed for some segments of our audience who are higher in authority and who are rules-based and who need an approach that really approaches the issue from their worldview and their values frame. When we're able to do that, we're able to successfully move them. So let's take a look. This is the message that we tested using an understanding of who we're trying to talk to, what are their values, what's a way to talk about an issue in a way that works for them. And I want to show you that ad, and then we can talk about part of why.
My parents taught me to be kind and follow rules, and I'm passing that on to my kid. But sometimes rules are unfair, like with abortion policies. In many states, if you have an abortion, or even help your friend get one, you get punished. I worry about the future. I trust our laws for safety, but they should show more empathy, especially for women in tough situations. Rules matter, but they must be guided by fairness and compassion.
So here's an example of this ad. Like all of our ads, the woman in this ad is not an actor. She's a volunteer messenger. She lives in one of the states that we work in. When we talked with her, this was a message that resonated for her and we saw would work for a segment of our audience. We worked with our neuroscience team to understand the small nuances that when we're creating an ad like this that help our brains lower their defenses and make us open to considering a new message, right? So here you're seeing a messenger that looks like our audience, that sounds like them. She shares their values. She's sitting in a kitchen that looks a lot like their kitchen. The fridge is covered with, homework and family photos. And those are all ways that we're basically saying, look, this is someone just like you, and this is what she thinks, which creates an opening for someone to think, oh, do I agree with her? She seems like me. Are we aligned? And when we do that, we create an opportunity to reconsider positions. And when folks saw this ad, it made them 18 percentage points more likely to support abortion care than if they didn't see it, right? And that was specifically for women in this middle age group. It moved them 18 percentage points. That's a really striking movement. And it's just an example of how that thoughtful, careful tailoring of the message and the approach to the audience proves successful. One of the questions I often get asked is, well, how do women see these ads? How do you get it to them? And the answer is that once we created that model, we're able to look at, this is a little technical, but you create this model, you figure out who you believe is movable, you are able to look at the voter file and actually get folks, actual addresses, right? And we're trying to target to those folks. We specifically look at the media and consumer data to track where our specific audience is spending their time. What shows are they watching? What social media do they use? Where are they on the web? And then we place our ads in front of them intentionally. I'm sure you've experienced that if you're on Facebook or something and suddenly you're getting an ad directed just to you. Lately, I've been getting some that I'm like, oh, I don't love that about me. Why are they showing me that ad? But they are paying attention to you and figuring out what you would want to see. And we do that too with our ads. So that means if they are on Facebook or they are watching a particular show, we're the ad that says, watch this, and you could skip it after a few seconds. And so the technology today allows us to track our ads and see if they were watched by a connected device in our target audience's household. How long did they watch the ad for? And how many times did they watch the ad? that allows us to be able to tell, did we saturate the person with that ad? Did they see the ad we need them to see enough times that the data would suggest that that would create the movement? And that's part of the cost efficiency. Once they've seen it enough times, then we would stop sending it to them and move on. I'm happy to answer more questions about the how of that technology if you want to hear it, but I want to make sure we have time for questions. So I'm going to just move us on to this next piece, which is, I've shared a little bit about our midterm impact and what we've learned over the years. We have a couple of videos that speak more to that, and maybe we'll send a different one out with the follow-up from this. But this is just a video we did at the end of last year that kind of talks about not only our individual impact, but the way that we help scale the movement. So we have a real commitment to sharing everything we're learning with our allies in the field so that we learn together and that we can have an impact that's far beyond what we could do alone. So when you invest in us, you're really investing in the movement as a whole. So let's watch a quick recap of that.
This year, we saw our fundamental rights stripped, equity attacked, and our democracy falter. We took action, mobilizing to meet the moment. While our allies galvanized the base, we did what we do best. We filled a critical gap in the field by connecting with moderate women, strengthening their support on the issues, and engaging them to protect our democracy. I love what we did with our issue education ads this year. Being able to connect with a voter in 30 seconds and watch her move to support progress was really fulfilling. It was one of the most positive and hopeful things that happened this year. Our incredible and newly refreshed digital community gave women a place to make sense of all these issues together and supercharge their civic power. Through this civic engagement program, research to understand our audience, and effective persuasion ads, we connected directly with Rust Belt voters living in rural, small town, and suburban America. When the Dobbs leak came out, we were already totally ready. We had abortion ads produced, and we were able to meet that moment and talk to voters using tested messages and ads about the issue in a way that we knew would increase their support for reproductive freedom. We also moved them on issues like paid family leave, the economy, and talking about race in schools. And we wrapped it all up for our allies in the Art and Science of Persuasion playbook. Our messages and ads reach millions more across the country through these partner organizations using our content to connect with their audiences.
So we decided to create our own Galvanize-inspired postcard.
The thoughtfulness that Galvanize brings to understanding what it is that is moving people and share that learning across the space is different.
Having an opportunity to review all of Galvanize existing research and build upon that was a very helpful starting point for our organization.
Where we worked, positive change happened. Support for reproductive freedom increased, we strengthened opposition to abortion bans, and disinformation was debunked as we messaged hope over fear and built trust in our democracy. Thanks to our incredible community of supporters and partners, we're ready to build on this year's success to create the durable majority this country needs for real and lasting change. Thank you so much for being part of this community. We could not have done it without you. Everything that you gave this year, your time, your treasure, your commitment, made such a big difference. Thank you for being part of the team.
Okay, so that is the little wrap up from last year. And then I just want us to look ahead to what is 2024 looking at. So here, think about what we're doing using all this research and all what the expertise we've developed and how to communicate with this critical population. Our plan is to get out there and connect with 4 million women in 2024. We are going to be fostering long-term engagement through that cultural programming. We are already on track to reach over 100,000 women this quarter as part of the Galvanize Together subscriber base, and we're going to keep building that and build that community. We're going to continue to develop and deploy ads on those core issues that our women are most worried about and that influence their civic behavior, economy, abortion and culture wars, and democracy. And we're going to continue to share everything we learned. So if you want to check out Galvanize Action, we have a playbook that we share with all of our allies, and we share all the research, all the ads, we white label everything. So if someone is working in a state where we're not particularly invested, they can take what we've done and use it to win there. So that's a big part of our ethos. We scale by sharing, and we will win together. So let me, and of course, we're going to keep working on our award-winning research. I'm super proud of that team and what they've taught me and us about this community and helped us to really achieve these results. So I'm going to remind you again that this call was the intro to Galvanize call. Next month, we have a call with Celinda Lake, who is a dear friend of mine and one of the foremost pollsters in the United States and a strategist for presidential campaigns and for core organizations. We're going to be able to share, she's going to share her research. We're going to share some of our latest research and sort of compare notes. So that's next month on the 20th. I hope you'll sign up for that. I did want to say to you this. I would love your support. If this inspired you to give, to help us do what we're doing, the evidence is there now. We know who we can reach. We know how we can reach them. We know how to do it in a cost-efficient way that is actually causing them to move on the issues and to stand up and support democracy. We need to be talking to them now. The data is super clear that you can't just talk to them at the very last second. It's the long-term engagement approach that worked for us in 22. We're starting these ads right now. We're running this community program now, and we need your help to reach more folks. The real question is, can we reach enough folks within enough time to help make a difference? So think about our work as costing about $2 a person, and ask yourself, what could you contribute? How many people could you help us reach so that we can make sure we're connecting with these women and having the impact we need to have to save this democracy before it's too late? And I really want to urge you to circulate this. We have a 25K match today. If you can help us reach that today, we have a donor who is on and listening and hoping that you might help us reach that 25, which would be a total of $50,000, which would be 25,000 women we could connect with, which would be amazing. I'm gonna end us here. I'm gonna invite you to join us next month, and I'm gonna remind you that this will be sent to you. If you want to take this video or even the short little one that we played in there, and you want to send that to your friends, that would be fantastic. We would love to have more people join us in the future. Going forward, we'll be kind of skipping the intro portion and really focused on what's the latest in our research, our ads, and the political landscape. So I hope I see you next month, and I thank you so much for joining us today. Bye-bye, everybody.